Rachel, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Nick. So pumped.
Yeah,
Longtime fan, first time caller.
yeah, there you go. Right. Really happy to have you. We've had a great conversation in the past, and I think our listeners are really going to like today what we are going to be talking about, because we're going to try and set them up for 2021, how to succeed and how to keep them fresh.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if we can all agree on one thing, it's that 2021, whether or not we felt like it was a successful year, or, when this comes out in December, we're looking back, taking stock of it. I think we can all agree that 2021 maybe owes us a few wins and we're going to make a few wins for us. So I'm pumped to chat, because I think, at least for me personally, 2020 has made me really reassess, what I'm going after, where I'm going, who I want to bring with me, that kind of stuff. Are you feeling the same?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same. I think 2020 has been one of those years that middle of March, you're just making sure you're going to survive. And then as it goes on, you realize that, as much as you hate hearing new normal, you better get used to it. So it's been a challenge, ups and downs. I don't think you could say there's a way to figure it out. It's just because it keeps changing on us. But
Totally.
I think everyone's going to be looking forward to 2021. Would you mind giving our listeners just a brief overcast of who you are and where you come from and all that good stuff?
Totally. Well, I am basically, my background is mostly in catering. So it's, special events, hospitality, of course, a ton of delicious food. And I basically loved what I did. I loved who I did it with. I loved who I did it for. I was making a great living. I'm based down here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then honestly, Nick, one day I woke up and I was like, oh, hell no. I don't like any of this. The company I built, the team I had trained, the reputation that I had, all of my industry connections. I mean, it started to get to a point where you couldn't pay me enough, to really show up, which is what ended up happening. I did burn out pretty bad. And so now I say I'm a liberated caterer. Basically, I have liberated myself, but I still hang out in the food and bev space a lot. I am a motivational keynote speaker and a sales trainer for basically people who love what they do. And love to serve other people. So, I do a lot of work with the James Beard Foundation, speak at Cater Source. I know we've shared a few conference stages in the past, and just really focus on, what is the link, at least to me, what is the link between happiness and success? Because I know that it's there. And I mean, I think from our brief convo, Nick, beforehand, it's there too. When you're happy and you're feeling good, things are just abundant and they're going right. Now, doesn't mean that you're without problems. No, but I knew that there had to be a link. And then, to add on top of it is, okay, well then why do great people end up hating their jobs? By the way, what do you do? Because, I threw away an entire career and reputation. But that's not always a reasonable, I mean, I was relatively young enough to feel like I could do that. Spoiler alert, a 70-year-old could throw away their life and restart over if they really wanted to. That it is going to be the talk of the retirement home for sure. But, that's basically me. I love, I always like to say I love margaritas and money. So, both of those things, I'm very, very pro. Pizza and profits, I'm good with that as well. We could just alliterate all day. But, I think that great people, they deserve to be successful. They deserve to be happy. And I think we all deserve to change, and kind of honor that. And I think that's a lot of where my talk on burnout comes.
That sounds great. I think when you talk about change, there's always a couple different camps you could be in. You could be in the camp that just hates change, but then there's the other one that kind of almost embraces change as an opportunity. And I think that's where the success can come, is when you're one of those people that kind of embraces change. And then how do you take change in and put it onto your team too? Because that's a lot of times you have to spin it in a great way, to be prepared.
Totally. It's so funny, Nick, and I don't know if you feel like this when you started your business, But I feel like, I always said, oh, I love change. Whether I was interviewing for a job when I was 15 and I got the memo, hey, listen, don't say that you don't like change. You got to say that you like change to, be hireable. Then into leadership and, owning my own company, I'm like, okay, part of the reason that propels entrepreneurs and people who love small business is because they see something and they're like, you know what, I could do that better. I wish this was different, and so we get in with this idea. But then as we start to care about it, have our identity around it, which is, by the way, is very American, like to have your identity be your work is like the rest of the world is like, what are they doing? And we're like, we love it, like we love that enterprise. But this idea that like, the more we continue in our businesses or we care deeply about what we do, the more we start becoming fearful of change. We think, no, don't change the way I've done this. No, I'm the one who can make decisions. No, I don't want outside influence. And it is ironic because, you look around the world right now and change is a constant. Change didn't ask if we wanted it. It just, the world had its way with a lot of folks. And also, too, there's been some good things. Like there's always the flip side of the coin, right? I mean, when you got into business, is that part of what maybe prompted you was you wanted to change something, or whether it was your life or a process or something like that?
Well, I think there's always that why for an entrepreneur, and that's kind of what you're asking is like, what's that? The why is part of the change too, but there was a deep rooted why, and it was if I'm going to be in this business at that point, it's 16 years, and I had all this experience, and I'm making money for other people. Why can't I do it for myself? And I didn't have a single penny saved for my kids' college. They were 12 and 10. So I felt like, I owed them more, and I owed my wife more, that, all these hours I've been putting in to make somebody else money, and I'm missing everything from communions to birthday parties to weddings to whatever. And she's getting asked questions of where's her husband? Does she really even have a husband? And I just felt like, there was time to make a change, right? Like it was time to say, all right, I'm going to take the risk and I'm going to do it for myself. And it was definitely the best decision I ever made. It just is one of those things that I think it's hard for people sometimes, because when you go back to your family and friends who were used to the 9 to 5 and used to what the current climate has really conditioned you your whole life, especially if you're not in an entrepreneurial family, is, people tell you, oh, you shouldn't do that. You can't go and do that. You're going to need it. Where are you going to get the money from? Where are you going to find workers? How are you going to find a space? Like, you're really going to quit your job? Like, that's all the stuff that you keep hearing. And once you hear enough of that, you stop listening to the little voice in your head that says, I can do this, and totally. I think, that's what you have to do, is you have to block out everybody else. You have to listen to yourself. You have to have that why, that when you're working 18-hour days and nothing's going right, that when you go home, put your head on your pillow, you can think of that why of, why do I want to get up in the morning and go again after I got the hell beat out of me? And if that why is big enough, then you're on to changing your life. And I think that's a great point.
Totally. Well, as you say that about, you had a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, and, God willing, they kept growing, right? And, the college was funded. But this idea about, that you're striking on, it's the why. When you start, there's a why. But as you grow in business, I think that's where a why can evolve. You can have additions on there. And some of it, I grew up Italian Catholic here. I'm retired. Sometimes I go for the Christmas music and the free booze. So full disclosure here. But the guilt I keep a little bit with. And when I think about what I started my business with, what I loved about, in catering and working in events as well, what really got me popping out of bed, it changed through the years. But what was funny was I didn't really notice along the way that it had changed. Just like kids grow, just like, weeds grow, I grow too. You grow too. I mean, that's the kind of point of life, right? Is, it's not just a stagnant, it should be the evolution of all of us. And so as I evolved, what I started to realize was the success that I was going after, it wasn't fulfilling in the ways that it previously had been. But to be honest, I didn't know another way, Had you experienced that? Like as you evolved, were there different reasons you were going for success, or maybe additions? I don't know if Disney cruises or something like that came into play. Vacation is one of mine that I say, you know what, this is traveling is so important to me. And it was a big part of my why to begin with. But I didn't own it as much. What about for you?
Well, I think it was real simple. In the beginning, I had three things I was going to judge my success off, and it was one that I mentioned when I knew I could pay for my kids' college. Number two would be when I could buy a car from this century, and and we wanted to move into a little bit bigger house. That was like my three goals. So the first year, business goes really well. We take it from $4,000 a week to $1 million in sales first year. And I could tell like everything on my three wishes or my three goals for success, or how I'm going to measure everything, is going to happen. So then I had to really think, okay, well, is that really how I'm going to judge success? Like, how am I really going to judge it? And then, the idea, the conception was, when my employees can do those three things from the business I'm building, then I can judge my success. Then I will be successful. So that's really what has fueled my expansion. We went from 1 store to 5 stores in 6 years. And the reason is so I could take a guy that's busting his butt cooking for me, and he could be a general manager of a store and make a great wage. Or I could take a driver who thought that they were, didn't a hard-working driver, but really wanted to learn everything else. And the next thing you know, they're, an assistant manager, or be able to create positions where, hire people. Where there was a great friend of mine was an executive chef, kind of at a business that he was there for 7 years, making the same wage. And he was able to come on with me, be able to be my regional chef, and make a great wage and get, enough raises that I think he's super happy being with us, but it was all from, watching those guys buy nice cars and buy homes and take vacations to Spain and stuff like that. And they work for me. That makes me feel good. And that way I can judge success.
That's awesome. And Nick, like zooming out, as somebody who is just getting to know you, zooming out and knowing what I know about burnout and success and happiness, it's like, Nick, you're happiest and you're most successful when you have a purpose of impact outside yourself, and here it is. You start with this idea of course you want to provide for, your kids, and the ripple effect that comes outside of ourselves that just expands. It's beautiful, because I'll tell you, in this, you mentioned the folks that don't understand. I mean, listen, Nick, there's something I should probably just admit I know about your listeners, and that they're weirdos, they're freaks, right? We are the freaks of the world that love our work, that don't mind the 16, 18 hours a day, that, some days I say, happy whatever day of the week it is, and I don't even mind it. I mean, this is fun, right? I mean, at our best, this is fun. When it's not fun, then that's a different convo. But when we're really working on the things that we care about, it can't just stop with our success. It has to be other people's. And that's, I think, one of those big divides between people who are really love their work, really find that identity in their job, and the folks that like to punch in and punch out. I like to say, I don't need you to understand me. I just need you to accept me. Because hearing those fears and things like that, if you don't understand the pride that I have, or that you have, or that Jason, your awesome podcast producer, has, when they know they've done something and we've done something that's outside of ourselves, if you don't get it, I'm cool with it, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time convincing you that the impact is worth it. It's got to be bigger than ourselves, because success as it stands alone, that's just the me. That's the old way of doing things. And I think that's where a lot of times we do get to that burnout stage in life, is because we're prescribed this definition of success. And we say, okay, let me check the boxes, and you kind of went, I would say, like level 2 on it. You're like, okay, well, let me secure, this for myself. Then I'll secure it for my family, my kids, the car. Have to laugh. What car did you end up buying, Nick?
Cadillacs.
Oh,
I,
right. I
I
love it.
I
But
always wanted a Cadillac. My grandfather drove one, and I always wanted one. And you know, I was the king of $500 cars. I mean, the absolute king.
yeah, what
And
was your first? You remember?
I don't know, probably hand me down somewhere. I mean, I had like, you know, of course, when I was 16, I saved all my money. I was cutting yards and everything else, and I bought a Pontiac Grand Am. But I'm talking about when I got married young at like 20, 21, and 20, and we had kids. And that's when, you know, the cars were whatever I could find on Craigslist, you know, $500
Mm.
vans or whatever. You know, cars that the windows didn't go up. You know, we had a plug-in heater into the adapter for heat in the winter. I mean, just like, you
What
know,
are safety protocols? You know what I
yeah.
mean, Nick? Eh.
When you don't have any money, they're nothing. You know, you just
They're
do what you gotta do.
optionals.
Yeah. So I think, you know, that was the whole thing. I think that was something that drove me, is like, hey, you know, I felt like I deserved more, but I also at the same time, at that time, was a real big Dave Ramsey disciple. So it wasn't like I wanted to go buy a car and get into debt. You know, I actually
Mhm.
didn't have a car payment till we had the business, and then I could write off the car payment. Like I literally never had a car payment till I think I was 36 years old.
I'm the
So,
exact same.
and
Yeah.
it was really hard for me to get that first car payment. I was like, I don't want to do it. But at the same time, um, you know, when you get into business, there's different reasons why. Like, okay, it makes sense to be able to have tax write-offs and stuff like that.
Totally. I tell you what, mad shout out to anyone listening to this that enjoys or understands tax code. I can barely follow the instructions of my tax accountant and I trust them, you know,
Yeah.
but I totally agree. You know, it's so funny you mentioned the cars because my first one was a 1981 Volkswagen Scirocco. And this thing was 800 bucks. I put 800 bucks into it and I sold it for 800 bucks. So, you know, okay, no problem there. But this idea of like, you know, a car and being freedom to me. You know, I live in North Carolina, so we don't have, you know, great public transportation like a city like Philly or New York, Boston might have. And, you know, growing up, being 15, 16, all you want to do is leave your parents' house. And the second I could, I worked Dairy Queen through the summer, put up with a lot of idiots, and a lot of delicious treats. And buying that car was my ticket to freedom. And it's so funny. I hadn't thought about it in this way, but I think, definition of success through the years, no matter what I called it, no matter what I said about it was always going towards that freedom of saying like, you know, I like to say I like to get FU money, and FU money simply means FU, I don't want to do this, or FU, I do want to do this, right? That is part of, I mean, money's such a good tool, right?
Yep.
It gives you these freedoms of choices and things like that. But it's wild to think, you know, those like tiny things, even if you know the cars don't really matter, you know, you've got that perspective, right? Health is, you know, most important, family is most important, but it's like that pride of being like, yes, like pops, I got my own caddy, like this is great, and I'm doing it in a smart way. I love that. The
Yeah, I
success
can relate.
matters.
Yeah, it does. And I think you're right about the cars. I know, you know, anytime we buy a new vehicle, first thing we do is go to our parents, throw them in the car, take them for a ride, let them drive it. Like
Of course.
that's it, you know. And I think, you know, there's something to be said for that. I guess, you know, I don't know what it is. Maybe that is a way, you know, we judge success is through what you drive. But I think for me, it's more just the feeling of all these broken down cars that I drove for so long. And then, you know, I delivered mail for 4 years, so driving the mail truck. And even this morning on the um, way out to the bank this morning, you know, I was driving down my old mail route, and I was just smiling ear to ear. You know, I was like,
Yeah.
well, this is just unbelievable that,
The
you know, I
the
remember all those long
perspective.
days. And yeah, I mean,
I,
it's the perspective of, you know, because that's the part that's hard, I think, for entrepreneurs too. You know, when you do start to become successful, like how do you judge, not bragging about it, and then but also being happy of what you earned, you know? And I think,
yeah.
my thought has always been that I really believe anybody can do what I did. It's not like I did something that was brand new that nobody ever did before. Like, it's I really believe in the American dream. I really believe that if you work hard and you learn, and you keep asking questions, that you can get to anywhere you want to be. You just have to believe in yourself. You can't, it goes back to everything I said 20 minutes ago. You can't believe in everybody that tells you why you can't do it. You have to start believing yourself that you really can do it. And I don't know, that's kind of just the way I think about it. If I can do it, definitely anybody can do it. I mean, no college, and, just work my butt off, and here I am,
Yeah, the grit aspect is real. And on the other side too, I think this is kind of this question I don't think I asked until I was at the depths of burnout, where I was like, I mean, freaking Ubering, having yard sales, taking gigs, I'd had this great 6-figure job, crushing it, leader, all this kind of stuff. And I burned out, and I just said, you know what, F this, I'm out. It's reason my podcast is named F This S. It is about the day that I quit, because I just, I basically took my reputation and my income and my position, and I just said, that's it. I'd rather not, let me not just throw this away. Let me put it in a trash can, pour some kerosene on it, light it ablaze, laugh maniacally, and then leave. And this idea about, okay, well, what is it that I actually want? Because I think that's where, we start checking off some boxes along the, you mentioned the American dream. The American dream is an ethos invented, actually, the phrase was actually coined in 1931, which is super interesting if you get into the kind of etymology of it. But the long and story short is it says, okay, well, basically it is that you can achieve socioeconomic success relevant or related to your ability and your aptitude, which kind of, to be quite honest, I'm just going to call it out here. It's kind of sexist and racist, to be honest. It gives this idea of like, oh, you can't be that successful if you're a woman, but you can be as successful as you want to be. And that was kind of an idea behind it. But this idea really, it's perfectly to what you said, because here's the thing. You can have the idea of what you can and can't be, but it just matters what you think. I mean, Henry Ford, we look at him as a great, pinnacle of American innovation. And he says, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So true, Henry. This is one of those things where, there have been people who have done the incredible and, started from the bottom and have created, like yourself, this, I'm just going to call it an empire, because it's how it feels sometimes. You ever look back at your life and you think, geez, I'm so glad I kept going. All the times that you didn't think you could, all the things, all the signs that were saying, don't go this way, but they were really just other people saying it. You knew the path you were on. It's that you believed in it. And I think it's asking, hey, listen, what do I want? Instead of checking all the boxes out there, right? This American dream ethos says that, you go to school, not defined as any level, but then, you go to work and you work for 30 years and then you retire. Nick, I don't think that's going to happen for most of us. And I don't think we could stop working if we tried. You're always going to be doing something. I feel like it keeps, at least, me young. I'd like to think I'm still very young at this point. But it's that drive to say, okay, well, what is success and what do I want to work at? Like that's the biggest question. What do you really want? And are you courageous enough to say, that's what I want, I'm going to go get it and own it, no matter if, somebody 3 pews up thinks that you're, a workaholic, egotistical maniac. Okay, no problem. Like, good luck. You're not invited on my private jet. That's all I'm saying,
Right.
But the other side too, if you want to be, if you want to save up enough money to, burn off your fingerprints and go live in Costa Rica off the grid, hiding from the government on a coffee farm. All right. I mean, listen, whatever your dream of success is, you don't want to be bothered, listen, you don't want your sister-in-law showing up, move 7 states away. They don't show up. Listen, define it however you want, but just be honest enough with yourself to say, okay, is this what I really want? And if the answer's no, trust that you can figure it out again, because haven't you always figured it out?
Well, that's it. And I think that's where, it ties right into the way that the American dream of the way I look at the American dream is just simple. It's like, I'm American, I can do anything I want. I didn't know anything about when it came up. If it came up with every chicken in a pot or whatever. Like my American dream has always been, I'm American, I can do whatever I want. It ties right into what you're saying is, what does it mean to you? What do you really want? And for me, it was like, I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to create this for myself and for my family. And that's the whole thing. And I think one of the reasons I really wanted to bring you on today was exactly that. You've got somebody that just goes at it, they work their butt off, and then, maybe they look up at some point and they say, yeah, it's great that I'm here. It's great that everything happened. But, man, I don't want to say the B word, but I'm burnout, or how do they say it after COVID? I think, we've talked about COVID, that it's been something else. I don't think, nobody's really faced anything like this in our generation. Sure, we've seen the time after 9/11, we've seen the housing market, but I don't think anyone's ever been to where they're in their pajamas for, doing Zoom calls with just a shirt on for, 6 months. Like nobody's ever really done anything like this before, so, take us into like how to prepare for 2021, what to do if you're feeling beat up and burnout, and where does somebody go from here? How do they keep the enthusiasm that they had when the ball dropped on 2020?
Totally. Well, it's a good multi-layered question, because I'll tell you the truth. Nick, this is one of the reasons I love talking about burnout, is because I think it was a 2017 study. The Wall Street Journal basically asked CEOs of all the Fortune 500 companies, in an anonymous survey, okay, have you ever been burned out? 96% of those guys said yes. And then when they asked, okay, like, hey, this is the results we've had, would anyone like to be interviewed about it? 1 out of 500 said, yes, I will allow an interview. And then they didn't allow it to be published, which is fascinating, because the second I saw that, I thought, okay, first of all, burnout makes you feel like you're on an island, that like somehow you can't hack it, or that there's something wrong, or maybe this is like a pit of despair you can't come back from. And so what we do, or at least I'm going to assume here, that we've got high performers tuning in. We got people who have got really big goals that don't just, magically happen if they don't work, tuned in here. But this idea around, okay, well, I'm just going to outwork it. And this burnout's not something you can outwork. Unfortunately, I have tried, can confirm. And the thousands of people I've talked to since, and writing my book and things like that, this is something where you have to put on a little bit of an e-brake and say, well, let's check the temperatures here, because we calibrate a lot of things in our life. We check on a lot of things in our life. The one thing that we don't oftentimes see is the dashboard, the warning lights that come on with us. And through 2020, I'd just like to say 2021, my personal thought here is that it isn't if burnout happens, it's when it happens, because it's going to happen to all of us in a different way. And it's going to happen to people that we love and care about. It might not be you right this second, but it might be your managers. It might be your leaders. It might be your regional chefs. It could even be, your spouse, because burnout, as its definition, it's basically, I like to say, it's when joy leaves your work. It's specifically related to workplace feelings, engagement, positivity, success. And when you lose that loving feeling in your work and you identify with your work, well, then it's easy to lose that loving feeling in your life, So what do you do about it? I do think this is, time for a great pause to say, do I still want what I said I wanted? If no, what it is that I want, and am I willing to commit to it? Because you've committed a million times before. We know that action attracts, right? So you got to get in action to the things that you want. I think on the flip side of it is, this was a big awareness piece for me, is I got to listen to the stuff that I'm telling myself on the day to day. There's a very fine line between martyrdom and being the hero of your life, Oh, and the biggest, I think, offender that I hear is, oh, I have to. And let me call BS right there. You get to. There's a lot of people. Remember when you wished for the problems that you had now? right? I think about this every time I pay taxes. I'm like, I am so thankful to pay taxes. Look at that money that I've made, and would I like to pay a little bit less? Yeah, maybe, but hey, listen, this is the price of doing great business.
It,
But I don't have to do it, right? I get to do it.
if I could just jump in there, I remember
Yeah.
the very, very first time that I got hit with that tax bill. I'm sitting in my accountant's office. It was probably like year 2 or year 3. We had our best year we had, and he gives me the number, and I about had a heart attack sitting in a chair. And he looks at me and he says, "Do you have a happy life?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Pay the tax." And then just kept doing his thing. Okay, but yeah.
So true. It's so true, and that's a perfect segue, honestly, Nick, into like, do you have a happy life? And if the answer is no, or you hesitate, I just want to encourage folks out there to say, okay, what's missing? What's wrong? Why don't I like it? And here's the thing. I don't know your spouse. Maybe your spouse sucks. Get a new spouse. It's okay. Let me just give you permission on that one. I don't know, but here's the thing. We've either got to get grateful or we've got to do differently. And I think it's both in a lot of ways. Uh, we can sometimes be so outwardly successful and so focused on either making an impact or serving others, or just those kinds of markers of success, that we don't know what it is that we really want. And here's the spoiler. I'm the oldest in a big family, and I thought, if I rebelled, if I did anything that would disappoint anybody, then basically, the family name would just be ran through the streets. So I had all this internal pressure on me. Here's the truth. People that love you want you to be happy, but it's your job to figure out what it is that makes you happy. It seems it's stupidly simple, and yet on the other side, it's so frustrating to actually own what it is that you want. Just like the Costa Rican farm, just like you want to own a suite at the Jets, or if you're a Jets fan. I don't know how many Jets fans are out there right now.
That's about
Yeah.
it.
But this idea of like, just own it. And if it's
Yeah.
something that you can't, it should be things that make your life better, and things that make you happy and that you can share with others, if possible. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna promise, and everyone knows this, this is just a friendly ghost of Christmas future reminder. There is a level of success you get to that will never be enough to wipe away how unhappy you are. It doesn't work like that. It's like, oh, I used to say, God, please put me back in my high school weight. And then I changed it. I said, God, please make me so rich. I just want to see if money could solve my problems. Neither one of those things have happened. I'm not, I'm not at the 100 million mark yet. But when I do, you and Jason, welcome on the jet. You guys come on with me.
So let me ask you this during the burnout, like, I think there's different types of burnout, right? Like there's the burnout, like I need a life change. There's a burnout that, I've been working on this really hard project, or, I've been going, everybody left at work and I've been the only one there for, however many months. And so is there different things that work? Is it sometimes as simple as taking a vacation? Is it sometimes as simple as just decompressing? Is it, what's the things you can do day to day also that maybe will keep you from burnout?
Yeah, totally. It's a great question. I like to think it comes down to three things, at least in the research I've done and the people I've talked to, and yes, personal experience. But when it comes to it, three things burn you out. The first one is when circumstances around you change. COVID, it shut everything down, or it made you work just as much or three times as much. There's a real perspective depending on what you do in listening. I work with a lot of healthcare systems, and they've been gangbusters in a year, but also too, there's burnout on top of burnout. Okay, circumstances change. Then there's the second cause of burnout, which is where your relationships change. And this can be, through natural progressions of relationships. It can be from your family situation changing or their family situation changing. It can be where someone gets promoted, or maybe you merge or you expand or you get bought out, right? I like to liken it to, you ever have a boss that you loved, like maybe, in high school or going through your 20s, and then the boss left and the new boss came in and you were like, this guy? No, screw this guy. You knew from the second it was going to start that, like, this was not going to be a transition that you liked. That is when a relationship can change. That, you want a leader to be a certain level, they don't live up to it, that kind of thing. It can be on the personal side too, but most of the time it's work related. And then it's really when you change. This is where I think more of the life crisis. But here's the thing, you don't have to quit your job and throw away everything, right? I just happen to have a flair for the dramatic, and maybe, not have any self-control in those moments when I quit. But the reality is that, you've got to be courageous enough to say, okay, well, what is it? Can I be honest enough here and say that this relationship's changed and I just don't love what I'm loving here? How do I get back to that love and feeling? One of the things I personally love to do with the folks that I manage and partner with is a coaching question. And I say, what needs to be said so that we can get our relationship back on track? It's a powerful conversation with managers because there's a lot of things in the room that we're not quite talking about, especially when we're in service industry, when we're serving other clients, right? I mean, how many times have you put the client before your own needs? Some days I go, 10 hours. I'm like, oh my God, I had to use the bathroom at like 10 in the morning and I completely forget about it. It's because I'm serving other people instead of serving myself. The same thing's true for circumstances. If something's changed, just be honest about it. There's going to be a lot of folks that won't want to go back into the office when this is all said and done. There are some folks like me who I'm like, I cannot wait to be in an elevator with somebody so I can talk to them. I really miss talking to somebody new.
Just don't sneeze.
No sneezing. Masks on.
Right. I love that phrase you said, what needs to be said to get our relationship back on track. Because I think that's so important. Communication is such a acquired skill. And really, I think it's underrated of how important it is in business and really in just relationships in general. But, sometimes you are sitting there, where you're sitting there, something happened, there's a riff, and you're wondering, like, how can we fix it? And sometimes there's things that you say are self-serving, right? Like you say things to make yourself feel better. And then the person goes and they say things to make themselves feel better, which probably makes you feel worse. And when you said what makes you feel better, it probably makes them feel worse. But I love that. I think that phrase is great. I even wrote it down because I think that's really important. What needs to be said to get our relationship back on track? And then just shut up, right? Like really listen.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, it's one of those things, chances are, and this is what happened with me personally, but chances are if you're burned out and, or you see somebody that is, really plummeting in their performance or maybe having that martyrdom syndrome, burnout signs can be you're emotionless, you're transactional, you're resentful, honestly, increased accidents. Sometimes universe or God will be like, hey, pay attention. And you're like, no, it's fine, but then, maybe you'll trip and sprain your ankle. You're still not paying attention. That's a very common narrative of burnout. But when you're talking with somebody, whether you're a manager or a leader, oftentimes burnout does come in pairs because people are looking to you, especially as a business owner, people are looking to you to set the focus, set the tone, set the energy. And if you're setting a burnout tone, well, that trickles down. And to be honest, the leader that I had before I started my business that I did burn out with, I look back now, I have immense empathy for the guy. He was burning out right with me and he didn't have anybody to talk to. And I think that's one of the cool things about your podcast and the community that you're building, Nick, is there's a lot of like-minded people that are together that it's not a sign of weakness if you get burned out. To me, when someone's burned out, I'm like, oh, you love what you do too. Like me as well. Like that's what bonds us together. Like, you also have high standards because average isn't going to cut it. It's one of the things about burnout. You look at yourself and you're like, slapping yourself saying, okay, come on, get it together, get it together. Come on, just get back on the horse. And it's just not restarting. You're not kickstarting again the way you could when it was, oh, just a bad day or, a bad season. This is about something has changed and we got to assess what's going on here because you can't scale a mountain. I mean, I don't scale any mountains. Let me be clear here. I'm not a hiker, but I assume you need different gear in the desert than when you go to Everest, right? And you got to be clear on what you're scaling.
How important is gratitude in fighting burnout?
I mean, personally, I would say on a personal level, with the risk of sounding woo woo, I think it's really important. Uh, and I would put an asterisk. I would say it's important to love what you have, be grateful for what you have. But also, too, if you don't want it, then enough gratitude's really not going to matter. You could say, oh, I'm so thankful for my dog, this damn dog. You didn't want the dog. The kids got the dog barks at you and bites you and pees in your shoe. Like, okay, I'm not big on faking it, to be honest. So this idea of like, oh, I should be grateful for all the things that are grateful, like kind of the Miss America answer there.
Sure.
I think it's about just being real clear. If you're grateful for the way a freaking great IPA tastes at the end of the day on a beautiful summer's evening, great. I'll tell you some things I'm grateful for. Just today, I wrote them down because I do start my morning like this. So I'll actually give you the daily journal that I do every day. But I said, for my sense of smell, because that means that I get to taste food and I get to smell when I get to go to the bank later. If someone's wearing good perfume or cologne, I'll smell them and I'll just enjoy it. And that's a weird thing. I am a happily married woman here. But you know what? I'm grateful for it. That's on my list today. But I didn't put like, the possibility of world peace on my list, and that's okay. It's
Yeah.
listen, judge less, love more. The great part of that phrase is it's got to start with you. You got to judge yourself less and you got to love yourself more, because you're certainly not going to be able to judge other people less if you're so busy judging yourself. And the same thing's true with love. So it's yes and. I'm a big, instead of either or, yes and the gratefulness for sure. What about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I think you're right. There's, like you were saying, it's real easy to, say I'm grateful for, my spouse, I'm grateful for my kids, my dog, blah, blah, blah. But it's finding those little moments that you're grateful for. Like I could be laying there in bed and I'm like, well, I'm grateful the wind's hitting me from outside right now. That breeze is just amazing. And man, I'm thankful for how comfortable this blanket is right now. Like there's little things that if you can be grateful in those moments, and realize it. And then also, sure, you can be grateful for, your spouse, your kids, but what are you grateful about them for? Like my daughter's at college, so it's really easy to say I'm grateful for my daughter, but it's for me, it's saying, well, I'm grateful that she still calls me while she's in college. It's grateful that we Snapchatted 15 times yesterday and she's still at college. Like those are the things that, I'm grateful for, because I don't know if, everybody has that. A lot of times our kids go off to college and you see them at Thanksgiving and that's it. But like, my daughter and I are back and forth Snapchatting all day long. And, I don't have a Snapchat for anybody else, honestly. Like I don't have it to Snapchat anybody. It's for her because that's the way she communicates. So that's another, thing about communication is sometimes you have to find other people's language. I could text her all day long and I'd be lucky if I get one text back. But we could Snapchat 15, 20 times a day. So it's, finding somebody's communication, finding their language they like to communicate in too. But
For sure. And having that awareness to know what you like,
sure.
and say, this is always a big thing, nobody, part of burnout sometimes is that martyrdom of me, or why not me, or it's all on me. And, I mean, I've been down that road. Listen, you've been married long enough, you at least have a moment like this, right? Long enough where you're just like, oh my gosh. And this idea though of, well, I can't expect anybody to meet me where I am or to do what I want if I can't communicate that or if I can't tell them. And that requires a level of introspection on my part to say, okay, this is what I want. This is not what I want. This is, what I expect. This is when I need it by, all those kinds of things. And I think as owners or people, I would say key team members who feel like they own businesses or take pride in ownership, we have to remember that no one's ever going to know our minds like we do, and people are operating on a, I'd like to think, a goodwill mentality. If they know better, they do better. You just got to teach them. You got to tell them where to go with it. And it sounds like your daughter's done a good job of telling you Snapchat's the way to go.
Yeah, for sure. How do you find vacations play into burnout and decompressing and having somewhere to go?
Yeah. Well, I think there's really two sides of it to me. Is I think, time away is really important, but you've got to make sure that it's really time away. I think a lot of folks, they say, "Oh, I have to check my email. I have to be on the phone. I have to do daily call-ins." And let me just ask you, do you have to or do you want to? Do you have to or you get to? But do you have to for a sense of being busy or having purpose? Or, are you in love with this idea that nothing can run right without you? Because I
Mm.
got to tell you, I mean, that was me for a long time. And first of all, no, everything can run without me. The world will not end when I end. And this is a good thing. And if you ever want a vacation, if you ever want expansion, if you ever want wealth, if you want to develop people in the way that they deserve to be developed and that makes the world better, you got to let go. You robbing people, your control. I'm just speaking general use here. Control that you have robs other people of the opportunity to be better and to learn. You got to give them space for that. So I would say the time away, absolutely important, but you got to check yourself and say, can I mentally get away? Can I put it away? And by the way, a vacation that you just spend your entire time bitching about work or talking about work, I'm going to call Fluey on that. That's not a vacation. That's a therapy session. And if you catch yourself doing that, get a therapist. Seriously, because I'm here to tell you what your friends, your family, your wife, nobody's going to tell you. I'm done listening to this. Okay. You gotta pay somebody to listen to that stuff now.
Yeah.
Cause if you can't separate it, that's important. But I think too, it's this idea of, okay, well, what kind of vacation are you taking? Who are you taking it for? Do you have some time for yourself? I personally, I don't have kids, so I hit the jackpot here. I get to do exactly what I want to do most of the time. But there's this idea of, one of my closest friends, the only vacation that he gets is going to see his in-laws. Last time I checked, my in-laws, I feel like I should be paid to do that, and they know it, they'll listen to this and they'll laugh and they'll say yes, but that's not vacation. And I have to be aware and I have to speak up about that and say, hey, listen, vacation to me is eating all the best foods. Vacation to me is seeing a body of water. Vacation to me involves a hell of a lot of tequila. And if I don't have to make a margarita, then we're on vacation, people. Please don't let me make anything. I don't want to do it. What about you?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, it's kind of twofold. What I found too is if you have somewhere to go during the day, a meditation spot or something like that, that can be a great, quote unquote vacation too from your day-to-day grind. And that's what I try to do too, is take that, don't feel guilty about, okay, it's 4:00. I've worked my butt off. The phones aren't ringing. I know I'm going to eat dinner at 6:30. Then I'm going to work the rest of the night. Why can't you take a 4 to 5 and shut the phone off and meditate and get your head right again and, go over your wins from the day and the wins you're going to have later in the evening. And I think that's important to be able to shut it off day to day so you don't get burned out, months down the road. And then as far as vacation, I think you're absolutely right. Like you have to have spots that you enjoy, that you like to go, that you like to share with other people. What I think I love the vacation. I love vacation different ways. I love the vacation with, groups of my family. I think sometimes that's fantastic. I love the vacation with just the four of us, of just, my two kids and my wife, that vacation. I love a vacation with just my wife. I think there's and sometimes you need to know what kind of vacation you need to take,
I
I
say
mean,
eight weeks vacation for everybody mandatory. Let's just
yeah,
call it what it is. We need 2 months vacation. And Nick, as you said, that idea about saying, okay, like the meditation spot and the
yep,
daily vacation, you said something really interesting, really powerful there. You said, well, why can't I? And that's the question. I mean, you're calling it out right there.
yep,
Why can't I? Right? Because we all have the story of, oh, I have to, oh, I can't, all stuff. I think one of the things that high performers struggle with is they don't want to do anything they don't think they're going to be good at. And taking like that mental slowdown or that vacation. I mean, I do it. I ride around. I'm like a dog at this point. I just ride around like my neighborhood, windows down, music up. That
yep,
is a form of meditation to me. I,
sure,
when I'm listening to the tunes, it feels good, right? And it recharges me. But this idea of, oh, well, can I really calm down? What if I'm not good at this? Like, oh, what's 10 minutes gonna do? And it's like, please, you get 3.5 minutes into a song, you know that a song can change everything. You know that a phone call can change everything. You know that the sun shining and standing in it can change everything. So find that version of it, because I think sometimes meditation, especially for busybodies, it's hard to think about it. Meditation, or that daily vacation, as I'm gonna credit you on defining this daily vacation idea. This is just what's gonna make you feel good, what's
yeah.
gonna get you back in touch with you. And it doesn't have to be 30 minutes, it can be 5, it can be 10, it
And
can be
I'll tell you
just
the
a few
one thing it's
songs.
right. And I'll tell you the one thing it is definitely not. It's not this. It's not your phone. It's not 10 minutes with your phone, half an hour on TikTok, blah, blah, blah. Sure, that's the same as, TV. Like you need if it's listening to the tunes all the way up, if it's, listening to meditation music, if it's just quiet, dark silence, like whatever it is, but it's not your phone, because wherever you start on your phone, you have no idea where you're going to go. You can easily hit that email button right after Facebook button or whatever it is, and it's not your phone. Like, but that's what's so hard. And I think the other thing with waking up in the morning and talking about whether you have a gratitude journal or you go through it in your head or however you do it, one of the habits that I really got away from was, as soon as I wake up in the morning, the first thing I did every morning was grab my phone. Right? Like it's just like that was the very first thing. And then before I know it, I'm, checking bank accounts, checking emails, looking at all the texts. And I'm like, my day has just started in this spiral of reaction. And I was like, what's it going to hurt? Why can't I, right? Why can't I, do 15 minutes or a half an hour of me first, or even 45 minutes to an hour of me first, then pick up my phone and then go into my day. And when I can train myself to do that, the whole rest of the day is a win. But
Totally.
it's when it's like, pick up my phone and just start going. It's man, you're down a rabbit hole for sure.
Totally. Well, and it's to the point, folks were like, how'd you remain so positive through, COVID? Because I mean, my business went from booming to, and now we've come back. I'm doing a lot of virtual keynotes and team trainings and things like that. But, long story short is I say consume with clarity. I don't listen to the news but 5 minutes before dinner time. So I have time to process it with my husband. And it gives me time enough. If I've seen something that upsets me, I can still go to bed at a reasonable hour. I won't be, up. But here's the thing. I told folks, listen, when you wake up with your phone in your hand, here's the day's news. There are good people. There are bad people. There's tough stuff. There's happy stuff and hopeful stuff. In America, we got an election going on. People disagree. There's your recap every day. Every day. That is, and by the way, that's going to be, I think, from here till the end of time. That that
Yes.
that is. And you know what? I can't control any of that. I can control me. You can control you, right? And it's this idea of, okay, what is it? What is it that I want to control? And by the way, when all that stuff hits me, am I going to be that reactive? person like you mentioned, or am I going to be a person who is so in touch with myself that everyone knows what contentment looks like and leadership looks like and happiness looks like, you know? That's my job, is how I show up for myself and how I show up for others. And I think that, you know, we have this misconception of always being there or being on or, you know, being in the know. You know what? Let somebody else tell you in the news and say, "Oh, did you hear X, Y, and Z?" No, I didn't. And then
Right.
they get to be the hero of that. They're like, "Yeah, I told, yeah, great. Awesome."
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. You don't have to know everything. You got to worry about yourself at some point. And you're right with the news. Like, it can just, especially right now. Like you said, people are going to disagree. If you're watching the news, it's nothing's good out there. You get both sides. It just destroys your mind. You can find yourself waking up 3 days later and be like, man, for the last 3 days, this is all I worried about. And it's like, really, was that really worth it? Like, you were very
And
counterproductive from it.
and we know the truth. It's a great day. We
Yeah.
woke up. Boom. Nailed it.
Yep.
I have a sense of smell. I think you do too, which means we get to taste food at some
Yep.
point today, right? We're listening to a podcast. We're recording a podcast. We have Wi-Fi technology. I got a beautiful bouquet of flowers here. It's sunny where you are. It's sunny where I am. This is great. This might be
Yes.
uh, this is a great day to have a great day. And it sounds corny, but it goes back to really what we started on. And it really is, what are you feeding your mind? Our brain is just a
Yes.
stupid muscle. It'll feed, oh, I'm stupid. Oh, I'm a failure. Oh, I'm going to screw this up. Oh, I'm a spender, not a saver. All this kind of stuff. Or you can feed it things like, I am successful. I'm happy. I'm sexy. I'm connected. Everything that I want is on its way to me right now.
Yep.
One of my favorite phrases is, the harder I work, the luckier I get. Oh, I sing that in my head all the time because it's true. I hit the jackpot. I mean, Nick, we randomly met on LinkedIn. Jackpot. Hey, and you know what? We're hardworking folks. The harder we work, the luckier we get. And it just leads to knowing more great people, making a bigger impact, you know, and getting to feel the sun when we walk outside later today. This is good stuff.
Yeah, there's so much truth in everything you said, for sure. Rachel, where can people find you if they want more of you?
If you want to come hang out with my slice of life, my craziness, I do a podcast called F This S, which is all around growing happiness and success. It's work based, it's life based. I mean, listen, work life balance doesn't exist. I'm looking for work life inclusion. Okay. So I do about 15-20 minute episodes all around growing sales, talking with team members, realigning your goals, stuff like that. But I hang out a lot on LinkedIn as well. So I'm at Rachel Sheeran. If you want to see my cute dog, you follow me on Instagram. I'm Rachel.Sheeran. But those are probably the most common places. I do have a TEDx talk as well called How to Burn Out and Be Successful. So TED.com features that, that was like, I got to tell you, that was one of the most surreal moments in COVID was, here you are, you're like, oh, everything is horrible. And then it's like TED.com presents Rachel Sheeran. And I was sitting right here in my office chair and my husband's next to me. I'm crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. They chose my talk, all this stuff. And, you think about it. And normally I spend about last year I spent about 250 days on the road, keynoting and team training and talking to franchises and stuff like that. And if COVID hadn't hit, I wouldn't have been able to share that with my husband at all.
That's so cool.
And watch that for the first time. So
Yeah.
it's definitely one of the best moments in my entire life, was just watching that, knowing that, if somebody felt burned out and they wanted to laugh, that was out there for them, and that somebody, in the TED universe said, hey, this chick's not bad. And, they gave it the green light, which was cool.
Can you talk about that process real quick for anybody out there, inspiring speakers, of how that process worked to get chosen as a TED Talk?
Totally. I would say that, this is from my personal experience, but,
Sure.
Look outside of your region. A lot of times people only apply regionally or like to the city that they have a TEDx in, but there's no rule on that. I did my TEDx actually in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. So I got a resort stay out of it as well. I highly recommend. I would say make sure that it is something that you feel very comfortable being known for and feel passionate about. This is one of those things where in TEDx events, they have themes that you can create proposals around. But to me, I wanted to talk about burnout. That was the idea that I had worth spreading. So I didn't so much care about the theme, that they had. The theme that was for my event was bold and brilliant. So, okay, I'll take that, but it's not necessarily burnout related. So make sure you really want to talk about it. You feel passionate about it. And one thing to note is that I think personally titles that kind of shock and awe, if people go, what's that about? That's a great title. So don't discount the title. And then also be aware that some TEDx's have, like, for example, TEDx Cambridge. That's one of the biggest TEDx affiliates in the world. They come with coaches. So you get coached along the process. Then there are other TEDx's that don't have any coaching at all. And I specifically went after ones that don't have coaches because I already am a speaker. I have a very clear, confident voice. I knew what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. And here's the thing. Can everyone benefit from coaching? Yes. Was TEDx the absolute scariest thing I've ever done? Yes. I was there the day of thinking, can I call out from this? How do I, I don't know, it's so nervous, so foreign to me. But this idea of, okay, do you want coaching? And if not, do you think that would be helpful for you? And kind of be aware of that. So I think there's benefits to both sides. It's just a preference. But hey, friggin' apply like crazy. I probably applied maybe 50 places.
Wow.
I got one yes. So yeah, don't be discouraged. Again, do you really want it? There's a great quote by I think it's John Acuff, and he says, are you interested or are you committed? And it's something I measure everything that I do. If I'm interested, not committed in it, I can own it. That's fine, but I'm not going to do it because I got too many things that I'm committed to in this lifetime. I just wrote a blog about it, the 4 focus pictures that I have. And it's like, I take it every 90 days. What am I going to say yes to? And what am I going to say not right now to? Doesn't mean never. It just means not right now because the goals that I'm committed to, they're too big to really spread around. So
I appreciate.
Yeah, those would be my best.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that for sure. And I think it's interesting how you said it took 50 different ones. So for somebody that really doesn't know, there's all these TED Talks. They're all around the world. And you go into like TED.com, I'm assuming, or TEDx.com, and you just apply to each one. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, so they all have individual organizers. And basically what you do, it takes a lot of legwork. So that's why I'm like, interested or committed. You gotta be aware here. But you basically you go in and they have maybe 100 locations, maybe a little bit more, all over the world. And you go in, you look for the organizer, you look for the date, make sure it's a good date. To be honest, I went to Punta Cana last December. If it was October, that's hurricane season. I don't know if I would have said okay. Also too, I just knew out loud, like going to somewhere like Beijing. I don't know the language. I don't know anyone there. Like, I didn't apply to that because I thought, well, that's probably not the place like I would feel the most confident or comfortable. Maybe maybe you don't want to go. Maybe you don't want to go to Houston. Maybe you don't like the Texans. Okay. Don't apply. So, oops. Sorry about that. But the long story short is, go to TED.com, look at the different locations, and then apply directly with, sometimes they'll have a process or like a call for speakers. I applied via the process that some of them had up there, but most, I would say probably all of them, I emailed the person directly, the producer, and said, you need me. This is why you need me. This is what I'm talking about. By the way, here's a picture of my cute dog. I really did attach a picture of a cute dog because I'm weird like that. And I think it's beneficial that you stand out as weird. Nick, if you want to apply for a TEDx, send a picture of you and a pizza. Okay? You do whatever you need to stand out. But it's a blast. And most of the time, it's kind of like if you've ever tried to get a job, most of the time nobody's going to reply. But the harder you work, the luckier you get. Somebody says yes.
Love it. Now, Rachel, it's time to solve the equation to your success. This is where I get to ask you 7 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Let's do this. I'm strapped in.
Okay. Best seminar or teaching you've ever been to?
The 5 love languages.
Favorite item you bought recently under $100?
Makings for an ice cream sundae.
Name an idol or hero of yours that you've met in person.
Larry Bird at the Boston Logan Airport.
Favorite book to give as a gift?
Ooh, The Desire Map by Danielle Laporte.
Something you do every morning before you brush your teeth.
Ask, how do I want to feel today and what am I going to do to feel that way?
Your personal mantra or favorite quote?
Oh, there's so many. Find out who you are and do it on purpose.
And a great question for you, place to go to decompress and reset.
Anywhere there's a beach and a margarita.
Rachel, thanks so much for being on today. Really appreciate it. I thought it was a great conversation. I think the listeners are going to grab a lot of good tidbits out of there.
Thank you, Nick. You're awesome. I can't wait to come back. We'll share a marg in 2021 for sure.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.